Spine-chilling encounter. We discovered a sinister witch's curse in our haunted cabin woods. The Williams family thought they were escaping to safety, but as they pulled into the gravel driveway of the old cabin, the air thickened with unseen dread. The trees towered ominously, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that danced on the wooden cabin's weathered facade. "It'll be fine," Tom reassured his wife, but even he sensed a shiver that ran down his spine. The familiar chirping of crickets, which should have sounded comforting, felt more like a warning now. As Sarah unpacked the car, the kids squealed, their laughter echoing through the woods, but the joy seemed misplaced. The crisp scent of pine turned sour, feeding an anxiety gnawing at Tom's insides. He glanced at the trees, their twisted silhouettes whispering secrets of the past. A strange noise pierced the moment, sending a wave of unease over him. The first howl echoed from the depths of the forest, sending chills through his bones. Something primal stirred in the darkness, as if it had been waiting for them. "Just a wolf," Sarah said, though her voice trembled slightly. Yet, the sinister grin of the shadows didn't let up. That night, as the family gathered inside, memories swirled along with the smoke from the fireplace. Laughter bubbled up, but the whispered warnings from the swallowtail breeze never left the periphery. They had barely settled in when Sarah noticed their grandmother's locket missing from the mantel, only to find it cold and glimmering in the depths of a dark corner. Each time it vanished, it returned in places that felt wrong, as if beckoning them to face a deeper evil. "You are just imagining things," Tom said nervously, his grip tightening on the armrest. The cabin, cloaked in dark history, felt like a bomb about to detonate. But the laughter turned nervous, the ghost stories they shared morphing into fears. They opened the old journal they found buried in a dusty trunk. The pages described vicious rituals, hints of an ancient curse lingering in the air of a witch betrayed, whose spirit now roamed these woods seeking vengeance. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the shadows stretched, a chill that had nothing to do with the weather seeped into their bones. The local sheriff, who they thought was harmless, shrugged them off with a chuckle, a jest of local lore hiding a sly grin. But his eyes, those hollow eyes, exposed anxiety that rippled through the family. In the back rooms, a sense of loss crept away from them. Their children huddled close, but whispers beckoned them deeper into the night. The first of them ventured outside, drawn like moths to a flame, their screams swallowed up by the suffocating darkness. One by one, they vanished, swallowed by the shadows that lingered just beyond the reach of the cabin light. Terror danced among the piles of abandoned hopes and shattered dreams that clung tightly to their lineage. The witch's curse tightening around as more secrets surfaced. Alone, the remaining Williams clutched the tattered journal, its pages alive with warnings. The air grew thick with dread as the power of the forest surged, feeding on their guilt, their fears. With each heartbeat, shadows flickered around them, whispering curses that reverberated in their minds. Just then, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. Their oldest child, gone. As the moon shone high, they knew this was not just a fight for survival, but a reckoning. The witch wasn't just a myth, she was a lingering essence of their blood. They gripped the journal, hearts pounding, knowing they had to confront their fears, or the darkness would take them all, one by one, into its grasp. The cabin stood silent, a foreboding sentinel watching them unravel, and the night promised no mercy, only eternal hunger. The air felt heavier, colder, as the remaining Williams stood together, echoes of their lost family ringing in their ears. Tom's heart raced, thrumming like a war drum, urging him to act. Sarah gripped his arm, her knuckles white. They exchanged frantic glances, fear contorting their features. Shadows danced across the walls, flickering in tandem with their mounting terror. "Where did they go?" Tom murmured, his voice almost lost in the thick darkness that enveloped the cabin. He could feel a sense of urgency rising with each passing second, a deep-seated need to find their children before they were snatched away permanently by the sinister force lurking just outside. "We have to stick together," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "We can't leave the cabin." Yet, the journal in Tom's hands felt alive, its pages rattling as if echoing the fear that wrapped around them. The witch's curse was real, each word pulsating with a wicked promise. Tom flipped through the pages, searching for guidance while Sarah scanned the dim corners of the room, her instincts flaring. "There has to be something here," he said, desperation creeping in. Then they heard a soft whisper, a lullaby that echoed from the deepest part of the woods. Faint at first, it grew louder, wrapping around them like a cocoon. The sound was beautiful and terrifying at once. Tom's grip tightened around the journal as fear welled inside him. "What if it's them?" Sarah suggested, her eyes widening with terrified hope, but the dread, thick as the fog that clung to the trees outside, told a different story. It was a trap. They knew this, yet their feet felt glued to the ground. They had to make a choice: stay in the cabin or chase the voices. "Tom," Sarah began hesitantly, "if we don't do something," her words trailed off, the weight of their situation suffocating. Tom swallowed hard, his throat dry. He felt the icy breath of dread tickling the back of his neck, a silent plea not to ignore it. With a shaky breath, he ripped the pages from the journal detailing a defensive ritual meant to ward off evil spirits. They needed to act. He flipped to the end, where he found a simple invocation. It could grant them protection, but would it be enough? The risk of enticing the witch lingered in the air. "Do it," Sarah urged. "We have to try?" Tom nodded, urgency sharpening his focus. They moved quickly, drawing symbols around them on the floor with chalk they found tucked away in the drawer, muttering the invocation under their breath. As they finished, a gust of wind slammed into the cabin, rattling the windows and slamming the door shut. The walls vibrated as if the house itself were alive, angry. Shadows thickened, swirling closer. The whispers morphed into desperate cries, pleading, demanding. Suddenly, silence. The cabin exhaled, holding its breath as a shadowy figure appeared at the window, its face hidden in the darkness. The other side seemed to blur, revealing glimpses of their children within the depths of that black void. Little faces, twisted in terror, reaching out. "Help us!" A scream echoed, pulling them toward the window as if a force beyond their control was luring them closer. Tom felt his resolve waver, his heart pounding wildly against his ribs. "We can't leave the circle," he yelled, but the glow of the children's faces was almost too much to bear. Sarah's eyes glimmered with tears. "We have to fight. We can't let her take them." Just as they braced for a confrontation, the front door burst open, flinging back with enough force to rattle the very foundation. An icy draft swept in, dimming the flickering lights and plunging them into darkness. The last thing they heard was that lullaby, now loud and sinister, winding its way into their ears like a siren-esque call. Wrapped in the suffocating black, they prepared to confront their greatest fear. But as they faced the shadows, a voice broke through the void. "You've come back, just as I knew you would." Fear gripped their hearts. This was no ordinary fight for survival. As they prepared to face what lurked in the shadows, they felt a sinking realization. What if the witch was right? What if this was the beginning of their family's reckoning with a dark past they couldn't escape from? In the cold grip of silence, they could feel their deepest fears closing in. And then, an echo of laughter rang through the woods, the witch's laughter. What had they awoken? What if the witch craved more than just revenge? The night hung heavy with unspoken threats, as shadows gathered around them, thickening, tightening. The darkness around them felt alive, pulsating with a malevolence that clawed at their sanity. Tom gripped Sarah's hand, their physical connection the only tether to reality that felt stable. The shadow at the window loomed larger, the faces of their children flickering like candle flames caught in a tempest, mouths contorting in silent screams. "Tom, what do we do?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with fear, echoing the dread that filled the cabin. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words failed him. Instead, he stared into the abyss beyond the glass, where the forest seemed to breathe and the trees twisted, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for them. The witch's laughter faded and returned, a circling sound that bound them tighter, wrapping them in its sinister embrace. "Mommy, Daddy," the tiny voices echoed, their innocence mingling with a haunting dissonance. "Stop it. You're not real," Tom shouted, trying to shake himself free from this nightmare. He focused on the symbols they had drawn, tracing their outlines in his mind as if they could anchor him against the tide of terror. But the darkness crept closer, shadows whispering secrets he didn't want to hear. He could feel the thin line of safety fading with every heartbeat. Suddenly, the shadows coiled together, forming something grotesque. A figure emerged, tall and twisted, defined by angles that should not exist in the human form. Its face was obscured, but he could feel its gaze piercing into him, searching for weakness. "Foolish mortals," it hissed. "You think protection can save you? Your desperation only feeds my hunger." And in that moment, Tom felt a chill that seeped through his bones. The lullaby shifted into a harsh cacophony, voices rising in a wail that threatened to shatter his resolve. He clutched Sarah tighter, but his strength was waning, the specter of dread suffocating him. "Tom, we have to do something." Sarah's voice quivered, breaking through his fog of terror. "We can't let her have them." The realization struck like a lightning bolt. What if this was more than just a fight for survival? What if the witch sought to drag them into her darkness, not only to claim their children, but to claim their souls too? Before he could respond, the figure lunged, a rush of darkness that enveloped everything. Tom screamed, the sound swallowed by the cavernous void around them. Then suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the chalk circle they had drawn. It pulsed to life, illuminating the malevolent face of the witch. Shadows recoiled at the glow, hissing like snakes. The air burned with ancient power, and Tom felt his heart race anew. "Use it," Sarah shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. The invocation. But as he opened his mouth to recite the words, uncertainty gripped him. Would chanting the incantation only strengthen the witch? Yet the cries of their children echoed louder, drowning out his fears, and he spoke the words regardless, his voice cracking against the darkness. "By this circle drawn, I summon light, protect my kin from endless night." The twisted form of the witch writhed, recoiling as the light surged. Shadows screamed, a tempest of sound flooding the air. But even as hope flickered, Tom understood that this was only the beginning. A deeper darkness loomed on the horizon, and this confrontation had only scratched the surface as the brightness spread, creating brief refuge against the witch's onslaught. A horrifying realization settled deep within him. What if the shadows held more than just the witch? What if real danger lay beyond her? The ground trembled. The inhabitants of the woods were awakening. Tom and Sarah felt the weight press down on them, panic bubbling as they anticipated what would come next. The shapes in the trees shifted, morphing into countless eyes watching, calculating. An unspeakable horror lay just outside their reach, and even the light seemed threatened as new shadows emerged. "What have we unleashed?" Tom whispered, dread enveloping him like a shroud. And with that, the laughter returned, echoing through the trees, rich and satisfied, a reminder that the nightmare had only just begun. Would they truly survive the horrors that awaited them just beyond the shield of light? The shadows swirled around them, closing in, hungrier than ever. The light pulsed frantically, as if it were battling against a raging storm. Tom and Sarah clung to each other. The warmth of their embrace contrasted sharply with the encroaching cold of the darkness that surrounded them. The pulse grew louder, thumping in time with their panicked hearts. "Can you feel it?" Tom gasped, his breath coming in quick, panicky bursts. "It's like it knows we're scared." The witch writhed within the light, her form obscured, but the malice radiating from her was palpable. The air thickened, a choking tension that made it hard to breathe. What they had done might have bought them a moment, but it was only a brief reprieve. "Look at the trees," Sarah shouted, pointing with trembling fingers. The woods began to warp, branches stretching and shifting into grotesque shapes, twisted like so many gnarled hands grasping at the sky. The eyes were no longer just watching. They were gleaming, moving closer. "Channel it. Focus on the spell," she shouted over the roar of the shadows that were spilling forth. Her eyes were fierce, even as terror flickered in their depths. But Tom was frozen. The incantation felt like a faint whisper against the growing chaos. What if the words twisted back upon them? What if they summoned something altogether worse than the witch? Yet, In the pit of his stomach, he felt the pulse of urgency. The cries of their children still echoed in his mind, each anguished call igniting his heart with a desperate need to act. "I want tea, let her take you," he shouted, his voice breaking. Tom took a deep breath, gathering every ounce of courage he could muster. He couldn't let fear consume them. They had to try. "By this circle drawn, I summon light," he bellowed, the words bursting forth with force. "Protect my kin from endless night." The shadows recoiled, shrieking in despair as if thrown back by an invisible force. The light brightened, almost blinding in its intensity, and for a brief moment, the twisted forms of the trees seemed to withdraw, their hungry eyes faltering. But the relief was short-lived. The witch surged forward, her voice a venomous hiss that sliced through the brightness. "You cannot escape what is yours. You think you can turn me back? I am the darkness that consumes worlds." Tom stumbled slightly, the force of her words striking him like a physical blow. He could feel the claws of desperation gripping tighter, cramping his chest. "We have to fight. We can't give up." Around them, the witch's laughter morphed, echoing, a cascading madness that filled the air with dread. The laughter coiled like a serpent around the pulse of their light, seeming to sap its strength. "Tom," Sarah gasped, pointing to the edges of their sanctuary. Shadows were rising at the borders of the circle, reaching and twisting, mere inches from breaking through. "They're coming." The ground quaked underfoot. Dark shapes slithered forward, a tide of blackness hungry for flesh and soul. Fear turned into panic, as primal and instinctual as raw survival. The figures were indistinct at first, but each glimmer of light wrapped around them revealed glimpses of anguish. Horrific faces twisted with despair. "They're trapped just like us," Tom realized, clutching his head as the noise grew unbearable, the wails of the shadows merging with their children's voices. Echoes of sorrow filled their ears, torment beyond imagining. The shadows were feeding on sorrow, growing stronger with each painful note. They were more than illusions. They were the millions of lost souls ensnared in the witch's grip, begging for release. "We have to break the circle," Sarah shouted, frantic determination igniting her voice. "It's the only way." But the very ground seemed to buckle at her words, shadows laughing with glee at their descent. They wouldn't easily let them escape. The terror of the unknown drew nearer, wrapping around them like a suffocating fog. Inch by inch, cracks began to form in the protective circle, streams of darkness wiggling through, creeping toward them. "What have we done?" Tom mumbled, panic clawing at his throat as he gripped the edges of the circle. They were losing ground. And just as the shadows surged forward in an overwhelming rush, a thunderous crack reverberated through the air, a fissure of darkness splitting the earth at their feet. "Tom!" Sarah screamed, her eyes wide, filled with fear and defiance. "We're running out of time. We need to decide stay or take a leap into the unknown." A choice hung between them, heavy and suffocating. He could feel the walls closing in, each heartbeat echoing louder as dread flooded his veins. "What lies beyond might be worse," Tom whispered, glancing back at where their children were trapped in the shadows alongside them. Their faces seemed to pale against the darkness, small and fragile. "Or it might be our only chance," Sarah urged, trembling. Another rumble, deeper this time. The forest roared with anticipation. With time slipping away, would they risk it all to break free, or remain bound to the shadows that threatened to consume them whole? The decision loomed, dark as the night around them. "Tom, we have to move." Sarah's voice sliced through his thoughts like a knife. The circle of light shivered around them. It was their only solace, but it was cracking. Tom could feel it. The way the earth beneath them seemed to throb with malevolent excitement. Those shadows, those wailing forms of lost souls, they were hungry, desperate to drag him and Sarah down into the darkness. Taking a shuddering breath, he locked eyes with Sarah. The fear in her gaze reflected the chaos swirling around them. "But if we jump, where do we go? What if we're just running into another trap? Do you have a better idea?" Her voice was sharp, cutting through the fog of despair. The shadows were closer, their dark whispers growing louder, echoing memories of joy twisted into anguish. "We're out of time, Tom." With every heartbeat, the ground trembled. The darkness roared with hunger, a tidal wave ready to consume what little light remained. "Then we leap," Tom yelled. He grabbed Sarah's hand tightly, feeling the sweat slick and clammy against his palm. On three. Wait now? He shouted, propelling them forward. They broke the circle and dove into the dark abyss. The world warped around them, swirling with despair and echoes of their children's laughter. For a moment, there was nothing but a void, a terrifying calm that stole his breath. The loss of light felt like a physical blow. Then, it hit them. They plunged into darkness like falling through a deep pit, swirling shadows clawing at their ankles, desperate to swallow them. A scream escaped Sarah as the darkness tightened around them, wrapping like chains, pulling them apart. Tom. Her voice cracked amid the chaos fading around them. Hold on. He grasped her tighter, yanking her back against him. They tumbled and spun until finally, they landed hard, the ground biting into their skin. Dizziness swam in Tom's mind, but as he blinked against the darkness, the whispers slowly faded. He looked up. They were no longer in the woods. Instead, they lay sprawled atop a warped and twisted landscape, a sickly sky brooding overhead. The air hung thick with the stench of decay, palpable and sickening. Is this? Where are we? Sarah's breath hitched, looking around in panicked disbelief. Not here, Tom gasped, feeling the weight of suffocating despair pressing down on them. The ground roiled beneath their feet, clamoring to be rid of them and the taint of light they carried. Run, Tom shouted, gripping Sarah's wrist and dragging her to her feet. They stumbled forward, blindly fleeing, the shadows lurking just out of sight, waiting for any sign of weakness. As they ran, the landscape warped around them, trees twisted into mocking figures, the ground split into jagged chasms, whispering secrets of those who had come before, inviting them into eternal night. Tom, Sarah shouted, pointing ahead. A dim light flickered far off in the distance, a candle in a sea of gloom. What if that's the way out? Panic fueled their flight, but the shadows were faster than they dared hope. They could feel dark tendrils reaching towards them, coaxing them to stop, offering a dark embrace that promised relief. Don't look back, Tom urged, propelling them forward. The flickering light beckoned, a fragile promise of safety, but each step felt heavier, as if the air was conspiring against them. The ghostly light grew brighter, and for a moment, hope blazed in Tom's chest. Almost there, but from the darkness behind them, a figure began to emerge, rising slowly like a nightmare. It was the witch, her eyes glowing with hunger, grinning as if they were her greatest conquest yet. No, Sarah moaned. The shadows writhed, and the ancient forest howled in fury. The ghostly light flickered weakly as the darkness surged further, wrapping around them like a wild beast. Leave us alone, Tom screamed, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The witch's laughter echoed loudly, tinged with madness. You cannot escape that which you don't understand. The darkness is your home now. As the shadows surged forward to engulf them, Tom felt the ground tremble. Beneath their feet, the last vestiges of light flickered defiantly. Would their fight against the darkness succeed, or were they destined to be swallowed whole? The decision loomed before them, more terrifying than ever. The darkness swirled around them like a living thing, alive and pulsing with a wicked presence. Tom felt the shadows reaching out, eager to touch their skin, to seep into their minds. Tom, Sarah cried again, her voice laced with fear. What do we do? Keep running, he barked, pulling her along, adrenaline fueling their desperate flight. The flickering light ahead seemed to pulse stronger as they neared. It promised hope, yet in the back of his mind lingered the thought that it could be a trap set by the witch. The laughter echoed, bouncing off the warped trees. You can't escape me, the witch taunted, her voice weaving in the air like a thread of silk. Tom's heartbeat thudded loudly in his ears, almost drowning out the chaotic sounds of the forest. He dared to glance back, just for an instant. The witch was closer now, shrouded in swirling shadows, her figure vibrant against the darkness like a candle flame amidst smoke. Faster! Don't look, he urged, vaulting over a gnarled root that seemed to lash at his legs as if to pull him down. Just as the flickering light began to take shape, a wall of sheer darkness slammed into them from the side. Tom stumbled, the breath knocked from his lungs as he slammed into Sarah. The shadows hissed, mocking their struggle. Tom, I can't, Sarah choked out, trying to pull away from the looming blackness enveloping them. Their connection felt fragile, as if the shadows could sever it with a single whisper. "Hold on, Sarah. Trust me." He grabbed her again, fingers digging into her wrist, the pressure of the darkness almost slipping her out of his grip. Suddenly, the light ahead swirled into a figure. It was a girl, pale and glowing, her face twisted with a serene expression. "You have to hurry," she pleaded, her voice haunting but clear. They want your light." "What do we do?" Tom shouted, feeling time slip away like sand through his fingers. "Find the shards." "The light, it's the key," the girl whispered, pointing towards the flickering lantern hanging on a twisted tree branch, its light battling the encroaching shadows. "But you must hurry. She is coming for you." Without considering the danger, Tom stumbled towards the lantern, dragging Sarah behind him. As they neared, the light pulsed brighter, sending flashes of warmth through his limbs. The shadows seemed to recoil from it, angry shrieks rising like a howling wind. "What shards?" Sarah gasped as they skidded to a stop beneath the lantern. "What are we supposed to do?" "The shards," the girl urged again, fading slightly, her form becoming nebulous. "They will help you fight the darkness. You must focus on them. Remember, only then will you escape." Before Tom could question further, a surge of darkness crashed forth, and the witch was upon them, her face twisted with rage and hunger. "You think you can defeat me?" she screeched, reaching out with claw-like hands, dark tendrils extending from her. "You will be mine." Tom felt a surge of terror pulse through him, but mixed with it was a glimmer of hope. With the lantern lighting the way, he turned to face the witch. "We're not afraid of you," he yelled, the roots of his fear unfurling into strength. "Take the light," the girl shouted, her essence coiling wildly. "Find the shards." They rushed forward, diving beneath the lantern's glowing halo. The witch's screams filled the air, a cacophony of despair. Cries of anguish echoed from the shadows surrounding them, clawing at the edges of his mind. As he knelt and reached toward the ground, he felt something cool and hard beneath his trembling fingers. A shard. But as he picked it up, a wave of cold washed over him, sending ice through his veins, mingling the strange warmth of hope with crippling dread. "What is this?" he asked, staring at the shard with unease. "There is no time," Sarah urged, grasping another shard. With every passing second, the shadows closed in tighter and tighter, their whispers overwhelming. "Tom," Sarah's voice rang out, panic striking like a bell. "What if we're too late?" He could feel the ground shifting beneath them, the very fabric of their reality crumbling. Would the shards bring the salvation they so desperately needed? Or would the witch and her twisted darkness swallow them whole? The next moment was approaching faster than they could bear. Would they find the strength to confront their fate? With the shadows creeping ever closer, Tom took a deep breath and prepared to fight, uncertainty clawing at his mind. A sudden chill enveloped Tom as he held the shard, its surface cracking with a dark energy that pulsed beneath the skin. The witch's cackling echoed menacingly, almost drowning out Sarah's frantic breaths. They were in peril, the world around them closing in thick darkness and malevolent whispers wrapped tightly against them. Tom glanced at Sarah, terror etched into her features. "We can't let her win," he shouted, the shard trembling in his grasp. He could feel the shadows writhing, hungry, twisting like serpents eager for flesh. But the flickering lantern above them, glowing fiercely, gave him strength. "Come on, find more," he urged, rallying their fading courage. Sarah knelt beside him, her nails digging into the earth as she searched amid the chaos. He took a deep breath, heart racing, forcing away the doubt. They had to believe that the shards had power, that they could fight back. With each shard unearthed, a wave of warmth surged through them, banishing the shadows momentarily with flickers of light. Tom felt something shift, a strange alliance forming with the shards, an echo of hope against the looming dread. He and Sarah exchanged glances, their fears unspoken yet palpable. "Tom, look!" Sarah shouted, her voice fierce despite the fear. She held up a shard, its surface shimmering like glass reflecting the moonlight. "We can use these." Her conviction ignited a spark of courage in him. Suddenly, the witch lunged forward, her face a mask of fury. "You are nothing but insects to be crushed," she screeched, tendrils of darkness slashing the air between them. The shadows clawed towards them, a dark tide threatening to sweep them away. "Hold it high," Tom yelled, brandishing his shard like a weapon. "We fight together." They mirrored each other's movements, shards clashing against the encroaching shadows. A blinding light erupted from their makeshift armament, illuminating the forest and pushing back the darkness. The witch screeched, recoiling as the light seared her skin. Yet the shadows behind her were relentless, swirling, eager to reclaim their fallen queen. "You think you can defeat me with mere shards?" Her voice twisted with fury, venom lacing every word. "This is just the beginning. Bring it," Tom shouted, adrenaline propelling him forward. He plunged his shard into the ground. The forest trembled, reacting to his defiance. An electric current surged, bursting from the earth in luminous waves, weaving through the trees. Tom felt a connection race through him, the shards vibrating at his fingertips. "Sarah, do you feel that?" he asked, all mingling with fear. "Yes, it's like it's alive," she gasped, her eyes wide as the light intensified. But the shadows fought back, surging forth with menacing cries, a primal hunger igniting within them. "Focus," Tom shouted over the cacophony. "We have to channel it." As he drew in a deep breath, the essence of the shards buzzed within him. Stories of light piercing darkness warmed his soul. The laughter of the witch darkened the sky, but he willed his heart to push against the fear, against the despair battling to consume him. The shadows howled in rage, and in that moment, he realized something crucial. The shards weren't just weapons, they were remnants of hope, fragments of light, meant to combat darkness. Yet, with power came a price. A realization hit him like a cold wave. What would happen if the witch turned the shards against them? "Sarah, watch out," he screamed, sensing the air shift. The witch's laughter crescendoed, her form morphing into a swirling mass of destruction. Black tendrils lashed out, and in that heartbeat, Tom sprang to shield Sarah. The shocking sensation of icy claws tore through him as he thrust the shard forward. The light exploded around them, illuminating the true depths of their fear and determination. But just as victory felt in reach, a chilling silence fell. The shards dimmed, flickering dangerously as if gasping for breath beneath the weight of a dangerous secret. Could they maintain their grip on their radiant light as the dark tendrils crawled ever closer, clawing at their very essence? In the stillness, the witch's voice dropped to a low, seductive whisper. "Come, join me. I can offer you everything you desire." "How do we resist?" Sarah whispered, fear threading her words with doubt. Tom looked back at the shadows, uncertainty growing in his chest. Would they buckle under the weight of temptation? He could feel the ground shifting yet again, the struggle still ahead. Would they escape the witch's insidious grip, or would her darkness swallow them whole? An uneasy stillness settled around them, leaving Tom's heart racing as the shadows tightened their grip, waiting to see if hope could hold against the looming dread. The air thickened, almost suffocating, as Tom stood frozen, heart pounding fiercely in his chest. The witch's voice coiled around them like a vine, promising power, freedom from fear. It was tempting, too tempting. He shook his head, forcing the darkness away. "Stay strong, Sarah," he urged, clenching the shard tighter. The cold blade bit into his palm, grounding him in the chaos. "We're not giving in." Sarah's face flickered between hope and sheer terror. What if this really is the end? What if we're meant to join her? Her hands trembled, the last flickers of defiance dimming beneath the witch's sinister gaze. "No, we can't think like that," Tom shouted, the fire of anger battling against despair. He turned his attention back to the encroaching shadows, feeling their weight pressing down on him. "Focus on the light. It's our only weapon." As if mocking him, the shadows pulsed, closing in with a life of their own. They formed twisted faces, each sneering and hissing as they darted closer. Tom's breath hitched. He could hear their whispers, horrific secrets scraping against his sanity. Memories pulled at him, shadowy figures from his past, a lighter time, laughter echoing through sunlit days. "Tom, we have to fight them." Sarah's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. She raised her shard, its light a flicker against the consuming darkness. Together, they sparked a chain reaction, illuminating their frantic surroundings with a series of fading bursts. The witch's laughter crescendoed, weaving through the air like thick fog. "You think you are strong enough to break this curse? To defy me? You will regret this foolishness." Tom felt the intimate chill of her words coil around his spine, freezing him to the core. But he pushed it away, igniting a flicker of hope from the shards still nestled in the earth around him. He remembered their warmth, and how they fought back even the smallest tendril of darkness. "Concentrate," he yelled, voice breaking through the haunting echoes. "Channel the shards. We can push her back." He thrust his shard forward, its light exploding with renewed vigor. The shadows shivered, recoiling from the intense burst. It felt like time paused in that moment, the witch's fury bubbling just beneath the surface, darkness giving way to their fierce resistances. But then she extended her hand, and a new wave of shadows surged from the ground, rising like a tidal wave. "Foolish children, you think you can withstand me? You think these shards are your power? They're merely fragments of what I gave you once. You belong to me." The ground shook violently as the witch drew all her strength, the darkness now a churning mass around her. Tom felt the earth tremor beneath him, resonating with her disturbing ferocity. They were losing ground, both literally and figuratively. "Help me," Sarah shouted, her voice laced with desperation. The shadows clawed at her legs, hungry fingers creeping up her body. Tom's heart twisted in his chest. He couldn't let her fall. "Come on. We have to merge our energies," he shouted, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He reached for her, the shard held high. Together, they shouted in unison, and the shards resonated with their combined force, igniting into a dazzling display of light. The darkness roared, shrieking in unison, thrashing as if it were a living entity. But just as they believed they were gaining momentum, the ground ruptured, sending Tom sprawling backward. The harsh brightness flickered dangerously, shadows slithering in again as a rift opened beneath Sarah, amplifying their horror. "No, Sarah!" Tom screamed, scrambling to his feet, but the shadows converged quickly, dragging her into the abyss. Her scream echoed around him, a horrifying sound that sliced through the night air, then suddenly cut off, his breath caught, mind racing with dread. The weight of despair crashed down. He couldn't lose her. Not like this. He had to dive into the darkness, to face the witch. But would he be strong enough to reclaim her from the depths of despair, or would he join her in the witch's dark embrace? He squared his shoulders, the knowing resolve igniting in his heart. It wasn't over. He would fight. Jumping into that rift, he felt himself falling through shadowed layers, an unseen world painted in darkness. The cold air clamored around him as he called her name, desperate and defiant. Would he pull Sarah back from the abyss, or would he condemn them both to the witch's curse? The answer rushed towards him as the rift began to close. And all at once, he landed with a harsh thud on a cold, hard surface. What would he find in this new realm? And was the witch truly done with them? Tom gasped, pushing himself up from the unforgiving ground. The darkness pressed against him, thick and cloying, almost alive. He blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to the dim surroundings. It was surreal, like stepping into a nightmare loop. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. "Sarah!" His voice broke, thin and echoing in the void. Silence stared back at him. He took a deep breath, heart hammering against his ribs. The air felt charged with an electric tension, like the moments before a storm. He stood, looking around. It was a twisted parody of a familiar place, a dark forest shrouded in mist, the trees bent at odd angles, their gnarled branches clawing at the sullen sky. There was no direction, no path ahead, just shadow and fear. Then he heard a whispering, low and sinister. It curled around him, wrapping tightly as if trying to pull him under. "Join us, join her," voices echoed, overlapping, menacing. "Get out of my head," Tom shouted, desperation clawing at his throat. The shadows morphed into fleeting shapes, darting in and out of view, whispering his deepest fears back at him. Each sound was a torment, a gloating reminder of his helplessness. He took a step forward, searching for some hint of Sarah, some glimmer of hope. She had to be here somewhere. The witch wouldn't take her without reason. There had to be a weakness, a mistake. As he moved, he noticed the light of the shard reflected against the twisting branches. It flickered with faint life, drawing him like a moth to a flame. "Stay close," he murmured, clutching it tightly. But then the shadows shifted, coiling around the trees, whispering promises mingled with threats. "You'll never find her. She is ours now." Tom's heart plunged. Was it true? Could he be too late? "Shut up," he shouted, trying to drown out the malicious voices. He focused on the shard, its warmth creeping into his palm, fighting back the chill settling into his bones. He pressed on, sweat beading on his forehead despite the freezing dark. The environment shifted again, trees bending, the ground pulsating beneath his feet. Ahead, there was movement, a flicker of light. He stumbled forward, blood racing, hope stoking a flame inside him. But it faltered as he came closer. He recognized the source. It was not Sarah. A figure loomed, shrouded in darkness but undeniably familiar. "Welcome," Tom the creature hissed, the witch slinking into view, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Did you think you could traverse my realm without facing the cost?" The shadows surged, an avalanche rushing towards him, an inevitable wave of despair. Tom's chest tightened. He raised the shard, now blazing. "Stay back," he shouted, the light swelling with each syllable. The witch's laugh pierced through the dark, a blend of amusement and rage. "You think mere light can protect you? You're not as clever as you believe." The shadows rushed at him, writhing serpents hungry for his flesh and spirit alike. The tension snapped as he felt their cold fingers grazing his ankles, yanking him down. He fought against it, desperately lashing out with whatever power he could muster, channeling his anguish and fear into the shard. Suddenly, he felt a familiar pulse fan through the darkness, a heartbeat, rhythmic and strong. "Sarah!" he screamed, and the name echoed in the abyss, the sound shifting the shadows for just a second. The witch recoiled, that flicker of uncertainty unmistakable. It ignited a flicker of defiance in Tom. "You don't own us," he shouted, and he hurled the shard forward, its light becoming a beacon. The shadows shrieked, recoiling in pain, but then surged again, full of wrath as the ground quaked beneath him. The rift began to widen. Would this be his salvation, or the witch's final victory? "Tom," a faint voice said, slicing through the chaos, warm and familiar. He turned, heart racing. Could it be? Was Sarah emerging from the shadows? But a sudden chill swept through the area, and the witch stepped closer, fury burning in her eyes. "You've only just begun to understand what I can do." The ground beneath him shook violently. Tom gripped the shard tighter, refusing to let go. The battle wasn't over, and neither was the lurking terror. Where was Sarah? What would happen if he didn't have the strength to withstand the witch's power? In that moment, the danger felt tangible, and he had to decide: press forward into the depths of darkness, or risk losing both themselves to the malevolence that enveloped them. And just as he prepared to plunge deeper, the shadows erupted with an ear-splitting scream that reverberated through the forest. What awaited him in the heart of the witch's realm? And would he ever find Sarah again? Tom's heart raced as he braced himself against the raging shadows, feeling their icy grip on his ankles tighten like shackles. "I won't let you take her," he yelled, propelling the shard forward. Its light flared, illuminating the darkness for a fleeting moment. The shadows screeched in retreat, their whispers morphing into maddened howls. Yet as the witch's presence loomed larger, the oppressive weight of despair settled on his chest. "You think your meager light can save you?" she hissed, a twisted smile spreading across her face. "No," Tom shouted back defiantly, the urgency of his mission igniting fire in his veins. He surged past the fear and desperation. He wouldn't let the witch bend them to her will. "I know you want our light, but it's not yours to take. Not now." He grasped the shard tighter, its warmth pulsing back to life. Then, like a bolt of lightning, clarity struck. "Sarah," he called once more, his voice booming across the murky expanse. "I know you're here. Fight it. We'll find our way back." And then he felt it, a flicker, a presence brushing against his mind, delicate but unwavering. The voice was faint, cracking like ice. It surged through the void like a beacon. Hope kindled within him. "Hold on. I'm coming." He pushed against the shadows, focusing every ounce of his energy on the fading warmth of Sarah's spirit. He began to chant, his voice rising above the chaos. "By this shard of light, protect my kin. Together we fight against the night. You will not win." The shadows rippled, recoiling as the pulsing light burst forth in every direction. Tom pressed forward, forcing the light to carve a path through the darkness. The witch shrieked, fury twisting her features, distorted. "You foolish mortals. You will pay for this. I'd like to see you try," Tom shouted, the shard thrumming with urgency as he pressed deeper into the void. With every step, he conjured memories of laughter shared with Sarah, the warmth of their children's smiles, all the reasons they had to fight. He lashed out fiercely against the shadows closing in, shoving them away as if they were made of nothing but ash. Suddenly, a familiar figure emerged from the swirling chaos, illuminated by the shard's light. "Sarah!" Tom screamed, elation flooding his chest. She was there, a silhouette carved in soft glow, eyes wide with fear but burning with determination. "Tom!" The darkness is fighting, her words choked as the shadows lashed out again, eager to reclaim her. But he wouldn't let that happen. "Brace yourself. We can do this together." He reached out, and as their fingers brushed, a synchronicity sparked between them, a bond as strong as the light they wielded. Together, Sarah mirrored his resolve, clutching her own shard, and the combined glow enveloped them in a dazzling radiance, pushing the malevolent shadows back like a tide receding in the wake of a storm. The witch howled in rage, but it felt different a shift. Tom could see the fear dawning in her eyes, the shadows losing their grip on him and Sarah. "No, you're mine," she screeched, launching tendrils at them. But it was too late. The lights surged, their love, their memories, all entwined in the golden glow that blazed brighter than any darkness. "Take this," they yelled together, thrusting their shards forward as they summoned the energy binding them to the earth, propelling it into the witch. The air crackled, a force outside their understanding unfurling, turbulent and freeing. The darkness shivered and flickered, screams cutting through the air like shards of glass. Then, as they stood united, the shadows that had once consumed the forest began to disintegrate, vanishing in a violent collision of light and darkness. In that blinding moment, the air took on a new quality: light, purity, warmth washing over them. As Tom squinted through the radiance, he felt an unstoppable surge of emotion. The shadows that had haunted their family turned to ash, unfurling like a withered leaf in autumn. Breathless but whole, they stood at the heart of the woods, their surroundings illuminated by a golden dawn, the cabin now far behind them. They embraced tightly, relief and joy mingling. "We did it," Sarah whispered, tears glistening in her eyes, embracing the warmth of the moment. "But what about the curse?" Tom wondered aloud, his heart still pounding. "The darkness is broken, but its remnants linger." Sarah gazed into the worries of the past, slowly dissipating. "We'll face whatever remains together. Nothing can tear us apart again." Tom nodded, awareness of the duality of light and dark grounding him. The fight wasn't entirely over, but they had overcome the witch's hold, emerging from the abyss together, stronger. "Let us go home," he said softly. With one last look at the darkened woods, they turned away, hearts full as they stepped into the promise of a new day, hand in hand. But remember, this is not just a story. It's your chance to join our journey. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss what's coming next. Smash that like button now to support our community and feed the algorithm. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Your support makes it all possible.